Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
He's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. Men's are brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef, working towards the weekend. Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And on today's show, we got 2 hours, and we're going to hit on a lot of different topics. We're going to start with LSU baseball. Saints rookie minicamp coming up in 15 minutes. Joe Healy talking SEC baseball in 30 minutes. What does LSU need from the conference this weekend? Jeff Duncan wrote a piece on Alvin Kamara that was very interesting to read, so we'll talk Saints at the end of hour number one as well. The NCAA has apparently voted to extend the NCAA basketball tournament to 76 teams. And it looks like the college football playoff is headed for 24. I've got thoughts on that in an hour. Chris Blair with us, maybe from Alec Box Stadium. They're delayed a little bit getting to Athens right now. We'll talk some baseball with Chris Blair. And LSU's got another basketball player that I think is pretty good and also kind of hard to pronounce. This is going to be an all-name team that Will Wade is putting together at this point. We'll actually talk to Chris Blair about that a little bit as well coming up in an hour and 15 minutes. But so we got LSU basketball, LSU baseball, college football, Saints football. What else we have? SEC baseball. We got it all. Let's get it started with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
LSU's midweek press conferences for baseball bump right up against the start of my show. They're very oftentimes at 12, 12:30, and I'm on at 1. So it makes it very difficult. I certainly can't go, and it makes it very difficult to get the information before I go onto the air. So sometimes I'm 25 hours late with some of the things that are said in some of these press conferences on my show. But if there's something that's said that I think is interesting, I'm going to talk about it. And I thought that Jay Johnson's quotes yesterday about his coaching of this team were very, very interesting. We're still learning Jay Johnson a little bit. I think I've got a pretty good handle on things. I'm comfortable with the things he does from a pitching perspective. I'm comfortable with the things he does offensively. And I feel like I've got a pretty good sense of his relationship with the media, what he's going to divulge, what he's not. And one of the things that we have gotten to know over the course of 5 years is every year kind of takes a different path. And this one has certainly taken a very different path. They lost 9 games in a row in the middle of the season. They lost a pre-conference weekend. They struggled early through a 2-week period in the midweek. Like, there have just been more valleys to this season than we're used to with LSU baseball. And Jay Johnson talked about and this is his words, not mine, mistake in coaching this team early in the season. And I'll give you the quote here that he gave yesterday. He said, "I think it's the nature of what you have to do in coaching now. Just where society's at," I'll just use him as an example. I'm reading a book on this right now, but like the Bobby Knight deal, everybody wants to do that. It does not work. You know, I was very hard on the team when we were 11-1. And then we lost 4 out of 5 games. I was trying to do it to show them it's not about winning. It's about how we play. Did not work. Did not work. And so you have to shift. And that's a better approach, period, with this team. Basically, he's saying, I went the Nick Saban, Bobby Knight route where we were winning. I didn't like how we were winning, so I was not very pleasant. I was very hard on these guys, and he doesn't think it unlocked the best in them. And he would continue on yesterday to talk about developing confidence and talking to guys and building them up as opposed to being so hard on them day after day after day after day. And he's just talking about society. And you could suggest it's worked. Kate Arambidi said this, 100%. Throughout the season, there's always going to be highs and lows. I think we're getting hot at the right time. That's what we need right now. We need a lot of confidence going out there, especially since we're banged up a little bit. we're missing some of our guys. And so having confidence in each other, having confidence in the guys that maybe didn't start at the beginning of the season, but they're in there now, that's what we need going forward. Now, look, you can say soft generation, you need to be able to be coached hard, they weren't doing things the right way early, and all that stuff. Like, I don't disagree with that stuff. I think that coaching guys and being demanding is important. I also think that they lost a lot early in the season. So Jay's job ultimately is not to just do things the right way, and I use air quotes. Jay's job is to win games. And if the guys respond best to positive reinforcement, then you got to give them positive reinforcement. You can't do everything your way. It's not 1951 anymore. Sometimes you need to do things a little bit differently. I'm listening to a podcast, a couple every single week, about the 2016 Cubs. And Joe Madden went in there and basically just said, hey guys, like, I'm here to talk. I'm here to help. I'm going to demand that you run to first base and respect 90 feet. I'm going to demand that you show up every day, but y'all need to do you. He had a saying, try not to suck. He had a saying, in terms of dress code on the plane, he had a saying that was like, hey, if you think you look hot, wear it. Like, it's just, you need to take care of yourself. I'll be here to communicate. And that's what Jay Johnson has kind of done with this group as the season has worn on. Like, I'll speak personally from personal experience. And this goes back to our personality traits where we did this Enneagram thing here in Guarantee. I don't respond to people yelling and screaming. I think that's a ridiculous way to function in society. Now, coaches do that all the time, and the football field is not really the same as the accounting cubicle. I'm well aware that they're different, but I think people that yell and scream and throw things and use profanity all the time and yell at people and demean people, like, I just don't think that's a way to function. It's the way a lot of people lead. I am all about building people up and having a positive mindset. And people think that's lazy and, kind of fly by the seat of your pants and whimsical. And, not everybody sees things the same. But the point of that is not like what I think is right or what you think is right or what was right 50 years ago. The point is, like, Johnson's job is to coach these guys and to make them play the best they possibly can. And this group just needs a lot of positive reinforcement. And that's essentially what they're getting right now. And a lot of those young guys are coming up with that. And they're having to be in a spot where they haven't necessarily been. Like, Omar Cerna hasn't been in the 2-hole at LSU until a month ago. Jack Ruckert didn't think he was going to play this year. William Patrick probably didn't think he was going to get on the field as of April 1st. Mason Braun was a starter opening day, lost those jobs, and I don't think they thought they would be key cogs in this thing when you get to May, but they are. And Aaron Beatty talked about those guys because Cade Aaron Beatty was every bit the prospect all of these guys were. He was, by some metrics, by some evaluators, the top 3 catcher in the country in his class. And he got to LSU, and he sat most of the time. Now, he got his way into the lineup with Ianson in the middle of last year, and then when they got to the postseason, Hernandez played the whole time. But Aaron Beatty can help these guys deal with the expectation and deal with a little bit of failure, which failure for freshmen in college in the SEC is more prevalent than anything they've had in their entire life. These guys didn't really struggle as high school freshmen and sophomores. They were good enough to play right then more often than not. I can't speak directly to Mason Braun or Jack Ruckert's freshman year, and they may not have been on, but like even if they were on the freshman team or on the JV team, or they didn't, this is the hardest it's ever been. And so Aaron Beatty said there's definitely an expectation when you're coming to this school and this program. Just because they didn't start at the beginning of the season doesn't mean they should just go out there and not expect anything. They're all great players. They have tremendous talent. I'm not saying it'd be okay if they were going out there and striking out every single bat. No, but they're just going out there competing, and they're letting their talent and skill take over, and that's good enough. And I think that's kind of what LSU has gotten to. Jay Johnson said 3 weeks ago, the time for the speeches is over. You want to give a speech after you get your butt kicked at ULL and throw it all around the infield and walk everybody for the first 2 innings? All right. You want to give a speech when you can't score in Game 3 against Sacramento State and you've lost 2 out of 3 to Sacramento State? You haven't started SEC play. You want to get the players-only meeting together. Jay wants to go after these guys and throw some fiery punches. Like, sure, that may be a time for that. But ultimately, every message that could have been delivered for the first 6 weeks was delivered. And at some point, it's like, okay, we all get it. Like, you better go play better. We're not going to give a fire and brimstone speech. We're not going to have a players-only meeting. We're not having to come to Jesus. Like, here are the guys. Jay Johnson said 3 weeks ago the freshmen are playing. They're not coming out of the lineup. Okay, go play. And it's very, very interesting to hear them talk about that. And Jay Johnson said in the middle of his press conference last night or yesterday, I think we've taken the bullets, been dragged through the mud, head stepped on, all those things, and we're still alive. You know who's the best soldier? The best soldier is the one that's not afraid to be killed. There's literally nothing to be afraid of. So go in there guns blazing with a lot of confidence and play. If it's good enough, it'll be good enough. If it's not, it won't. There's literally nothing to be afraid of at this point for this team. And this is where I'll tie a bow on this. There's nothing to be afraid of because you were so poor for so long that the expectations that hover over this program 365 days a year aren't really there for these guys right now. They have an opportunity that's big, but the expectation, they sit in a team room every single day that we go into for press conferences that on the top of the wall has in huge capital letters, Omaha. There's a dog pile on like every wall of that player's area below the box. You walk into the receptionist area, dog pile from 2025. You walk into the team room, dog pile from 2009. You walk down the hallway, you see Warren Morris. Like, it's everywhere. There's an expectation when you get here, you will go to the College World Series and you will win. And that's what you show up on opening day. We start talking about Omaha. And I'm not going to shy away. I'm not going to stop doing that. That is what it is. But because this team faltered so many times in the middle of the season, their attitude changed. It did. It was no longer, oh my God, what is happening? We're not going to get to Omaha. That's not what happened. The attitude at this point is, hey, we're playing pretty good. That's the attitude. That's what you hear from Kate Arambidi. That's what Jay Johnson's saying. There's no more, hey, you have to go to Georgia. You better get 2. You better come back against Florida. You better get 2. And that's maybe not good enough. So then you got to go to Hoover and maybe get 2. They're done with that. When's the next game? 5 o'clock on Friday? Foley Field? All right, what's up? We're playing pretty good. Who they got pitching? Doesn't really matter. We're scoring 6 a night. This is not really a conversation about right and wrong, the right way to coach, the right way for these players to think right now, the right way for them to think on February the 14th. This is not right and wrong. The fact of the matter is that this team is feeling loose, is feeling confident. The young players are feeling a little bit better. Aaron Beatty's in the zone. Schmidt pitched decent last week. Jay Johnson is backed off, going nuts, and he's just going to come to the ballpark with a positive attitude and help those guys. If you follow John Eads from WAFB on Twitter, he tweeted out yesterday a video of Jay Johnson. I think he's having fun coaching these guys right now. And he might be. They played better the last 5 games. It's not right and wrong. It's just the situation this LSU team is in. And they might go to Athens and get absolutely pummeled for 3 days. They might. That is very possible. And then it'll be over but Hoover. But they might carry that attitude and mess around and win 2 games over there. And then all of a sudden, come on back, take a couple days off, wait for Florida to show up. That won't be a lot easier. But the quotes yesterday were not about Omaha. We're not about national titles. We're not about national seeds. We're not about players-only meetings. They were about, hey, we're comfortable, we're confident, we're playing better, we're getting hot at the right time. Let's go. So that's the team you're going to see on the field tomorrow in Athens. Whether it works or not remains to be seen, but I tell you all the time, I'm not a big press conference guy. I make a living talking about things that athletes and coaches say, but I oftentimes don't take a lot out of it. I then give my opinion on top of it. That's what I am really here to do. I think most of the time you're getting coach beat, half-truths. Will Wade's got a whole team assembled. He won't tell you who it is, okay? So press conferences are oftentimes hollow. Yesterday was not. Yesterday was a couple of guys, Kate Arambidi and Jay Johnson, opening the door to what's going on inside that baseball team right now. And every team will be different, and Jay will have to push different buttons. He's got this one playing a little bit better. We'll see if that can carry on to much better competition tomorrow. Thursday's show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Take a time out. We'll come back, talk some Saints minicamp with Luke Johnson next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC. FabryChevrolet.com. FabryChevrolet.com. You want a new truck? GMC Sierra's up to $13,000 off MSRP. Chevy Silverado's up to $11,000 off MSRP. Had that deal running. go see them. If your lease is about up or it's just time for a new ride, Fabry Chevrolet GMC is happy to help you out with that. They've got a wonderful customer service team. That's what the Fabry family has built this thing on for 35 years. They've been in this city for 35 years serving you, and that's why their reputation is as good as it is. They got this new point, Highway 61 in St. Francisville. Go by, take a test drive. Maybe it's a new SUV you're looking for. Tahoes, Suburbans, Yukons, Denali's, they've got them all at Fabry Chevrolet GMC. The entire inventory is online at FabryChevrolet.com. Take that short drive to St. Francisville and see them on Highway 61, Fabry Chevrolet GMC.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Father's Day is coming up, a little over a month away. Looking for something for the dad or dads in your life, Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef might be a fantastic gift. Its grilling season is well underway. Get some of the best in beef, Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. They bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. Luke Johnson is a part of those with NOLA.com and The Advocate covering the black and gold. Joins us now on Jim's Firearms Hotline. Luke, how are you?
Buddy, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's our pleasure. Saints rookie minicamp starts up tomorrow. Your interest level in that on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I'll call it like a 7 right now because I haven't covered anything
Okay.
in months, But I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna be like, it's just a bunch of dudes in shorts and t-shirts running around, and I'm not really getting any sense of it. But I'm excited to see these guys. I'm excited to talk to them, even if I don't think we're gonna get a lot of real information out of this week. It's gonna be nice to just kind of get back into the swing of things and to see what these guys look like filling out their uniforms.
I've kind of thrown out some arbitrary numbers that don't really mean anything. It's just kind of how I felt. I thought out of last year's draft class where the Saints organization was, they really needed to find 4 starters out of that draft class, and they may have done better than that. And I put a tag of 3 on this one before they ever made a selection. How do you feel about those 2 arbitrary numbers and their in that moving forward?
I think if I would have gone into the draft, I think 3 is probably a number I would have landed on too. I don't know if they got 3 starters out of this draft, but I do feel like they're going to have at least 4 guys contributing in some way to this team. So even if they're not playing starter snaps, you're talking about guys who are going to be in rotation, who are going to be playing meaningful roles for the team. So in that vein, I'm talking about Christian Miller and Oscar Delp and Bryce Lance. I don't think any of those guys are going to be necessarily traditional starters. Maybe Christian Miller, but Miller, I think, is going to be an important piece of their defensive line rotation. I think he's going to get a really healthy number of snaps. He's a young, explosive guy on that D line, and they don't have a lot of that outside of Brian Brzee. We don't know what Vernon Broughton's going to be like coming back from that season-ending hip injury last year. So I think he's going to be an important part of that, especially when it comes to defending the run. Yeah, they were, I think, better than people are giving them credit for against the run last year. I think they finished number 2 or 3 in the NFL in expected points added per play. Which for the nerds out there are going to know what I'm talking about, and the non-nerds are going to be like, what the hell ever. But that's a really telling stat. And I think that can kind of take away some of the, they were playing from behind, yada, yada, yada stuff. I think they were just a really technically sound run defense, but adding an explosive playmaker in there is going to help. I really like the Oscar Delp selection, and I went into the draft thinking they needed another tight end that was going to give them more of a kind of traditional role at that position. Because the 2 guys they have, in Juwan Johnson and Noah Fant, I think are solid tight ends in the NFL, but they're receivers first and foremost. In Juwan's case, he was literally a college wide receiver. So they needed an inline tight end, somebody to take the Foster Moreau and Jack Stoll role. And then they just got a supercharged version of that. He's 6'5", he runs a 4.49. You saw his highlight reel is just littered with explosive plays, running down the seam, catch and run, which is going to they're going to find a way to use that in this offense. But more importantly, he's a good player at the point of attack. He's a solid blocker already, and that'll allow him to run some some 12 personnel and some 13 personnel, which is something they didn't do a whole lot of last year. When you're looking at some of the better teams in the NFL, the Rams, some of the better offenses, the Rams ran a ton of 13 personnel. The Buffalo Bills ran a ton of 22 personnel. This will create some avenues to do that and just get more creative with their formations. And then finally Bryce Lance, I think he's just going to have a role. I think it's going to be small. It's going to be limited, but I think there's some special things you can do, and they'll find a way to use them. And obviously, Jordan Tyson is going to be a starter.
You mentioned a name that I wanted to bring up today because I just haven't talked about him at all in a year, and that's how long he's been with the organization. But you mentioned the hip injury. It's Vernon Braun. There's an obvious connection there with Bo Davis. What can we expect from him? Are you expecting to see him at rookie minicamp? And what does he potentially add if he's right to that defensive front?
Yeah, so I was really curious when I looked at the Saints put out their roster for who's going to be attending rookie camp, and Vernon Braun's name wasn't on there.
Okay.
So I was a little surprised by it because they just didn't see a whole lot of him last year. He had a season-ending injury after the first game he played, but I know they still feel good about him. It's just he's still just a mystery. I think it took him a little bit to get his kind of legs under him last year, which is what you expect for a mid-round rookie defensive lineman. It's a very physical position. It's hard to whether you're a college freshman or a NFL rookie, it's hard to just jump in there and be super productive right away. But I think he's still an unknown. So he's going to be somebody I'm paying pretty close attention to when they go to their team OTAs and minicamp and then training camp, because they used a 3rd round pick on him, and all the guys they drafted behind him were contributors. Jonas Sanker and Danny Stutzman and Quincy Riley, those guys played, and at times they played really, really well. So they could use something out of Vernon Braun, and I think it's just totally up in the air right now because we just haven't seen much of them.
And let's talk about Brzee to kind of close that. He's obviously going to be rookie minicamp and well beyond that. But do you think there's still some progression left in his game, or is he kind of who he is at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think he got a lot better last year as a run defender. I think the switch to the 3-4 was really beneficial for him, just being a well-rounded player. But I think in this scheme, there's just less avenue for him to impact the game as a pass rusher than you would have if he's playing a 3 technique in a 4-3 defense. So I think there's more than whatever he finished with last year. Off the top of my head, I think it was 2.5 sacks. But I don't know if he'll ever be the 8-9 sack guy that he was his second year in this front. I think they're okay with that as long as he continues to be a more well-rounded player. When he's putting up those 8 sacks or whatever it was, 6.5 as a rookie, something like that. He was leaving a lot to be desired as a run defender. And if you're just a situational interior pass rusher, there's a lot less of a market for that in the NFL than there is for a situational edge rusher. Yeah. So it was important for him to take a step forward as a run defender. I think he definitely did. I think there's still more room to grow. I just don't know if the numbers are going to catch up to what he was doing earlier in his career.
And last thing, your colleague Jeff Duncan wrote a little bit about running back and specifically Alvin Kamara today, talking about the lack of production and maybe the fall off in his performance and what that could mean entering the season. Do you have a feeling on Alvin Kamara's role in the team or future with the team, either one?
I mean, my gut is telling me he's going to be back, and by July 25th or whenever they report for training camp, he's going to go up there and crack a couple jokes about how it was all overblown this summer, whatever. And I do think that I'm intrigued by what he can be with a better situation on the offensive line, with playing with a developed Tyler Shuck, with some better weapons on the outside, with a better feel from Kellen Moore what he can be, and frankly just taking a lot of use out of him. Right. I don't think he was ever supposed to be a guy who's getting 25, 26 touches a game, and I think his play suffered because of it. All that being said, I just don't know if he's ever going to look anything even remotely like he did at the beginning of his career. I mean, he's gotten a lot of wear and tear. He's been injured just about every year. some of it's nagging stuff, but that's stuff that kind of piles up. And we just haven't seen him be like a really explosive player for a while. I mean, Jeff mentioned it in his column. Audric Estime had a 30-plus yard run last year, and AK's had one of those in like the last 1,000 carries he's had. Yeah. He's not the same player, but I think there's a chance that he can be a better player than he was last year, with a better situation around him, with Travis Etienne kind of taking over the lead back type of role. And maybe it's something a little closer to 2024. Look, he is not that far removed from a really good season. 2024, he had a career high in rushing, 1,600 yards from scrimmage. There's a chance it's still there, but it's harder to see it after what last year was, which was just frankly speaking, like easily the worst season of his professional career. And you start wondering about things when a guy's turning 31 in whatever it is, August or July.
Enjoy getting back in the saddle tomorrow. We'll be reading over at NOLA.com and the Advocate Saints rookie minicamp tomorrow. Luke Johnson will be there. Thanks, Luke.
Appreciate you, buddy. Talk to you next week.
Sure will. We absolutely will. Appreciate Luke for checking in from New Orleans every single Thursday. I want to remind you about Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Some call it overplanning. Boudreaux's Electrical Services, they call it foresight. Not that hard to have foresight around here. There are going to be storms. In the summer, there are afternoon thunderstorms that can knock you out of power. And, of course, hurricanes. The time to think about that and your power outages is not when that storm's in the Gulf. It's not after your lights are out and your AC's off. It's now. Boudreaux's Electrical Services can get you that Generac home standby generator in your home quickly. Come out, assess your situation, get you a quote. If you decide you want to move forward with it, they'll bring out a local team to install it. You'll have that maintenance and that monitoring from a local company that cares and knows our climate around here in South Louisiana. If you're a business owner and you can't have your business without power, Boudreaux's Electrical is happy to come by and help you commercially with those Generac home standby generators. Give them a call. Neil and Melissa have been running this thing for 40 years. 985-397-1562. That's 985-397-1562. Or the Gonzales location, 225-300-9389. That's Boudreaux's Electrical Services. The Jeff Duncan column on Alvin Kamara was fascinating. I'm going to get to that in 15 minutes because he brought up some really interesting points about Kamara. And there are some that are skeptical of that, and there are some that understand that. I told you initially when that deal was made, I didn't like it. Not because Alvin Kamara is not an awesome guy, not because he hasn't been an unbelievable player, not because he did anything wrong in his negotiation. I'm just looking at the age. I'm looking at where the organization was. I didn't love the deal, but the deal was made. So now you got to determine whether or not you're going to take that off ramp that was created earlier in this offseason, or if he's going to be your number two back and you feel like spreading the field and lessening his workload will bring out that explosive player again. We'll talk about it coming up in 15 minutes. Joe Healy is going to be with us from D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. We're going to do that coming up after this break, talk about a wild SEC weekend to come. What does LSU need in terms of help? I gave my thoughts yesterday. We'll talk to Joe about that. The NCAA tournament in basketball is expanding. We'll talk about it. The college football playoff is going to expand. We'll talk about it. Chris Blair coming up in 45 minutes talking LSU baseball. So still plenty to do on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Love getting by Marucci. Take a tour. Love to invite you to take a tour over at Marucci's. They'll show you where the official bat of Major League Baseball is made. They make 1,200 of them every single day. You can see where they're crafted, where they're stained, see where they're shipped off to the best players in the world. You can see and learn about the history that took this from a backyard shed to the official bat of Major League Baseball over the course of 22 years. And they also want to invite you to become a member over at Marucci. Be a member? What? Well, if you got a youth baseball player, youth softball player, it's kind of eating up with it, maybe their season's coming to an end, and they want to take swings in the cage. They want to take a chance to go in there and pitch in the weather-controlled area. You can do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you become a member at Marucci. Key card access gets you right into the cages, right into the pitcher's mound, and your son or daughter can get to work. It's an awesome, awesome perk of being a member over there at Marucci. Go by and see him. Buy tickets to the tour at MarucciSports.com. Marucci.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday's show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Always talk about Some SEC baseball in this time slot with our guy Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. Highway to Hoover podcast. Of course, weekend waypoints every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as well. Joins us now on Jim's Firearms Hotline. Joe, how are you?
Doing all right, Hunt, as if life wasn't busy enough with this time of year on the baseball diamond. I'm also moving this week, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna read my address off for the listeners if they want to come help.
Okay.
So grab a pen and paper real quick, listeners, and maybe you can come help me.
I'm sure they'll be right there. I'm not planning on moving for a long time. That's just not a fun thing at all. But Godspeed with that. Let's talk some baseball. Let's talk about this weekend moving forward because that's where a lot of LSU fans' heads are at this point. I want to talk about Auburn and Mississippi State, who start tonight. I think these two teams are really good. I think these two teams are Omaha threats for sure. What do you think about their prospects moving forward, and especially this weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting because they're a little bit of the opposite of what I assumed they would be. So maybe not the opposite is not the right way of thinking it, but I'll put it this way. I thought going into the season, Auburn's offense was going to be what carried the day, and its pitching was going to be like it has been really the last several years, where it's been good enough during the regular season, and then it was a little bit sketchier as we got it against the best teams in the SEC and got into the postseason. And it's actually been the opposite, where the pitching has really led the way for them. Their lineup is still very good, but I thought it was going to be maybe the best lineup in the SEC, and I'm just not sure it's that. So that has been an interesting development, and they passed a big test last weekend. That pitching staff, which I was still kind of waiting to see, okay, let's see what happens against a really good offense, and they took one on in Texas A&M and did fine. They didn't allow the Aggies to score more than 5 runs in any one game. And so for a pitching staff, that the best lineup they faced before Texas A&M might have been like Nebraska, like that was a pretty good past test for them. Now they've got some tough tests coming up, including this weekend. Mississippi State, I thought it was maybe the best lineup in college baseball, and that has actually sagged a little bit. They're 6th in the SEC in hitting in conference play, and I don't have a great explanation. Ace Reese is hitting about 225 in conference play. Noah Sullivan's not really hitting for any power. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but the bullpen has really picked them up. They've got maybe the best starting pitcher in the SEC in Tomas Valinkas. He's in that conversation. So they've been helped out by a pitching staff that I wasn't sure about. And it's been a similar thing with Auburn, where it's just like this pitching staff has proven time and again they're good enough to get it done. And I guess I'm just going to have to start believing it until I see otherwise.
Ace Reese hitting 220 in conference play. You say, I went to Starkville. He hit every ball 220 miles an hour while I was in Starkville. So that was an unpleasant portion of that weekend. LSU, we all think they need to get to 13 to have a chance here. And I would suggest that they do need a couple of SEC teams probably to back up. Kentucky would be one of those. They play Florida this weekend. You feel like the Gators can take control of that series in Gainesville? That's what we need here in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Florida's been on this kind of like up and down, and they've been on a little bit of a down. They got the series win last weekend against Oklahoma, felt like a step forward for them. So I think that's a team that's heating up here at the right time. I think the thing about Florida that I think has been hampering them is they felt like a little bit like one arm short. They've been running Reitner out there and Lugo Canchola out there basically every single day, and it feels like those guys have maybe gotten a little bit fatigued, but Jackson Barberi is set to come back this week. That's going to make their bullpen at least one arm deeper. I think that really, really, really helps them. The question with Florida moving forward, though, is just, do you have enough impact in the lineup? And they found some, Caden McDonald was the big star of last weekend, a guy who had like 12 at-bats after Friday's contest, and he was their best player over the weekend. So is that sustainable? If that's a sustainable thing and he is suddenly a run producer, then I think that's a huge development for Florida, because that's where more of my questions are. I don't really have a lot of questions about can they pitch well enough, because on any given weekend they might be the best pitching staff in the SEC. They certainly have a claim to be the most talented pitching staff in the SEC. It's just a matter of, do you get something other than, offensively from someone other than your top 4 guys in the lineup, because that's been their issue so far in SEC play. The
other team LSU would like to see back up is Vanderbilt. Unfortunately for LSU, they play Missouri this weekend and South Carolina the next. The question I have for you is, do you trust Vanderbilt to win 5 of those games?
No.
Okay.
And here's the thing. So, and this is just a little bit of just to give you a snapshot of it. So Warren Nolan has this neat little, you might know about it, but for your listeners, like this neat little tool where you can go to the RPI predictor and it'll predict what they're going to do the rest of the season and what their RPI would end up being if they do that. And it has them going, I can't remember if it's 5-1 or 6-0. It has them doing basically what they need to do, but it still has their RPI at 65. Now, that's not the only metric anymore. You've got the DSR, you've got the KPI, but I am not so sure. That would be a huge outlier throughout the history of college baseball if a team with a 65 RPI gets in. So I think it's one of those situations where I think they probably, even if they do go 5-1 or 6-0 over the last 6 games, which I don't really trust them to necessarily do, I think they still have work to do in Hoover. Now, Vanderbilt is a team that tends to do things in Hoover every year. They're kind of as consistent as it gets when it comes to SEC tournament performance. So maybe that's not the worst thing in the world for them to go to Hoover and feel like they need to get something done. But it certainly does feel like they are on a razor's edge right now, because even if and I'm just picking a number out of thin air, even if the DSR says they're 32 and KPI says they're 48, if they're 65 in RPI, is that going to be good enough that one metric says you're good enough? I'm not so sure. It looks, to me, you make me pick today, it looks like that regional streak for Vanderbilt's coming to an end.
All right, let's talk about LSU and Georgia. Tigers headed to Athens to play what may be the best teams in the league, certainly with the best record in the league, and they're doing it with like half their team. So we'll see how that's going to look in Athens. Tell me a little bit about Georgia. Let's start with the pitching staff and what you've seen from those guys from a rotation perspective.
Yeah, Volchko has been he's their lead starter. Volchko has been a little bit of a different guy. At Stanford, he was a big-time stuff guy that didn't have command. And this is where the difference between control and command is different. So he had control at Stanford. He didn't walk a ton of guys, but he didn't have a lot of command. It was a lot of middle fastballs, and even if you're throwing 98, if it's middle, guys will time you up. So that was the more of the issue for him, is he gave up a lot of hard contact for somebody who throws as hard as he does and has stuff as nasty as he does. Well, the command has gotten better this year. So he's a true Friday night guy for them. I think that's going to be a really tough matchup for LSU. The second day is a little more interesting because Dylan Vigneault is still on the mend. He's still coming back from he missed an outing. It was precautionary. It seems like we can take that at face value because he pitched last week. He only missed the 1 week. Sometimes you hear precautionary and kind of roll your eyes, but I think this is one we can take at face value. So he's back, but that's not as settled for them. I think you can get to him, and he's probably only going to throw 3 or 4 innings. If you can get him out of there earlier, I think you're in better shape. And the reality is they don't have a Sunday guy, Georgia. So you're in a situation where, hey, you know what, we're gonna have to play one of those rock fight games. And I'll give LSU this: like when they've gotten in rock fight games this season, they've done better than when they've had other types of games. Those are the types of games they've tended to thrive in, as games where, hey, we might have to win this game 9-8 and come back from 3 different deficits at multiple runs. That's kind of the thing that they seem to thrive on for whatever sadistic reason. So that's intriguing to me. So if I'm LSU, like, they've created a path here. It's just a matter of, like, I think if you're going to win this series, you're going to have to beat Volchko or Vigneault. Take your pick. Vigneault is a little more, I think, gettable at this point in time, but you're going to have to beat one of those 2 big arms to win the series.
And offensively, it just seems like they just hit a lot of home runs. How do you pitch to Georgia?
Yeah, carefully, I guess. Yeah, I mean, because the issue is they'll also take their walks. So, I mean, that's kind of the trouble. And one of the things that I think they're doing a better job of this year is that it feels like it's a team that isn't – it used to be a lot of home runs. It was a decent number of strikeouts, and it really wasn't a lot of plate discipline. It was – even if it wasn't strikeouts, it was a lot of, okay, you put that ball in play, but should you have really swung at that pitch? It's kind of the stuff like that. And they've really smoothed a lot of that stuff out. I think it's been a big difference in this year versus past years for Georgia. So they are a difficult proposition to pitch to at this point in time. Now, that being said, you know, they have had weekends where it just hasn't been that. Now, the pitching has kind of bailed them out, but it's not necessarily been the runaway. I think it is the best lineup in the SEC. It's them and A&M, but they have had weekends where you've been able to slow them down a little bit. So it's not like this is not Georgia Tech, where Georgia Tech has not for a single second in the ACC been shut down from a lineup perspective all season long. This is not quite that. So I do think there is a little bit of a window, but man, it is really tough. But I got to give LSU this in the big picture. They have created a path for themselves. If they can win this series in Athens against Georgia, then we can have a different conversation next Thursday between you and I about what the future looks like. But they've got to earn that right.
That is correct. We'll see if they can do it starting tomorrow afternoon, Baton Rouge time in Athens. Joe, enjoy the baseball. Best of luck with the move. We'll talk next week.
All right, Hunt, see you, buddy.
He is Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team. Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef brings you our Thursday shows each and every week. Y'all know about Sagrera Farms. I've been telling you about them for over a year now. Call Sean, 225-719-1723. 225-719-1723. Get that Father's Day gift list checked off with some premium Angus beef, steaks, ground beef, everything you can want to fill that freezer for the dad in your life. Sagrera Farms. Call Sean at 225-719-1723. We'll take a time out, come back. Alvin Kamara. Jeff Duncan's saying, I don't know if that's the guy the Saints are going to lean on a lot this year. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Love telling you about my friends over at Gotro's Outdoor Power. They got 2 locations, Airline Highway and Gonzales. And the Gotro family's been at this for 22 years. Family owned and operated, that does not mean small. They're the National Hustler Dealer of the Year 2 of the last 3 years. They have the biggest hustler inventory in the state, biggest parts inventory in the state. So if you're looking for a new zero-turn mower, that grass is growing, you got a property to maintain, Hustler needs to be your brand. Gotro's needs to be your stop. It's Gotro's Outdoor Power. You can stop by 6 days a week. That includes Saturday, where they're open for half a day. Go by and see them. They can get you behind the wheel of a new zero-turn mower from Hustler for less than $100 per month. Customer service, second to none. They'll send a trailer for you to get it dropped off. Parts are on the road 7 days a week. It's Gotro's Outdoor Power. Gotro's Outdoor Power. GoTrosOnline.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Got a lot to get to in hour number 2. Chris Blair will be with us in 20 minutes. We'll also hear about LSU's newest basketball commitment in hour number 2 as well. But I want to wrap the hour talking a little bit of Saints. Jeff Duncan's got a really well thought out column at NOLA.com in The Advocate. I'll read an excerpt from it. I don't want to read the whole column. I highly suggest you go check it out, but I'm just going to take an excerpt from it and then give my thoughts on it. He's talking about Alvin Kamara and potentially his drop in play. He said Kamara's rushing success rate of 32.06% ranked 63rd out of 65 backs with 50 or more carries last year. 63rd out of 65. His 18.7 attempts per broken tackle were well worse than the league average of 16.4, so not breaking as many tackles. Ranked last among 49 backs with an average of 1 point yards after contact per rush, and 53rd of 58 in elusiveness. That's a Pro Football Focus proprietary metric that looks at the success and impact of a runner with the ball independent of the blocking. He's managed to produce one run of more than 20 yards in the last 3 years. One run of 20-plus yards in the last 3 years. By comparison, Audric Estime, who joined the team in Week 10, produced a longer run, 32 yards, in 46 attempts on the season, and that's Kamara's 1,002 attempts over the last 5 years. And then he says, to be fair, Kamara has produced 2 50-plus yard receptions during that span. So he's suggesting here that, Alvin Kamara is well below league average in broken tackles. His rushing success rate is almost dead last in the league. His elusiveness metric is almost dead last in the league. And this is a guy that the Saints are going to lean on potentially this year behind Achane, who they went and signed. And it's an interesting thought. And here's my 10,000-foot view of the situation. Kamara's not what he once was, but they're not asking to be what he once was. And all of those numbers that are compiled over the last 3 years for Alvin Kamara have been done in either awful offenses or behind shattered offensive lines. And the quarterback play has been not great. You're talking about the end of Derek Carr's roped. He was playing hurt half the time. You're talking about Spencer Rattler. You're talking about rookie Tyler Shuck. Terrible offensive line, no weapons. He was in as adverse a circumstance as I can imagine producing those numbers. So to me, I look at it and I go, I accept that Alvin Kamara is not what he once was, and he was a Pro Bowl tailback. I accept that Alvin Kamara is probably never going to be that again, most likely. I also accept that Travis Achane, same name now that we have for new pronunciation, that Travis Achane is going to take the lion's share of these reps. There's going to be a much better offensive line if they can stay healthy. The field will be more spread because they have better weapons on the outside, and you now have to account for Tyler Shuck beating you if all goes well. And this is a far better circumstance for Alvin Kamara to work in. And so if you're asking him not to be an explosive back who rips off a lot of 30-yard runs, and not to be a guy who averages 17 carries per game, and not to be a guy who is running behind an offensive line that cannot block for a quarterback that strikes no fear in the defense, and you're asking him to be a guy who takes 7 to 8 carries a game and catches 5 or 6 balls a game, that's all of a sudden a much more manageable workload for a guy who is a great teammate, loves the city, has done everything right, and is just taking a reduced role. So, yes, I fully understand that his play has dropped off. I think that there's a portion of that is because of Kamara and his age and his injuries, and a portion of that because of the circumstances he was in. You can run that sliding scale however you want. You want to put 90% on the team? Fine. You want to put 70% on Kamara? Okay. Like, we'll quibble with that, and we'll probably learn as this moves forward this year. There are some that will be skeptical and will run to Twitter and suggest, hey, somebody in the Saints organization asked Jeff Duncan to look into this so that when they let Kamara go, there's not some sort of outrage. There is printed substance in the media as to why they've done that. I'm not going to run to the conspiracy table desk right this second. I'm just going to observe Jeff's column for what it is and give my thoughts on it. I didn't like Alvin Kamara's contract when they gave it to him. I did not like it when they gave it to him. Not with his age, not with where as an organization. But that's essentially water under the bridge now. Can he help this team right now? And I think the answer is yes, in a reduced role. You want him to be the bell cow back? No. That offensive line gets banged up again and Shuck regresses? No. If the Saints are good on offense, Alvin Kamara will be a good piece to that good offense. That's what I think. So look at some Saints talk here on this Thursday. We will take a timeout for national headlines and Sports Center. When we come back, expanded NCAA tournament, expanded college football playoff. How are we feeling about it? I'll tell you how I feel about it coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com. I was in Swing Easy Golf Club yesterday. Awesome spot. Hit some golf shots. Played 17 and 18 at Pebble Beach. Par 3, piercing through the wind. And then a long par 5 and hit that draw tee shot and then try to hook one around there on the green. It's a lot of fun. I love it. They're cooking some things up over at Swing Easy Golf Club right now. And among them is going to be some league play. And we're going to get involved in getting you a free spot in that league moving forward. We're not ready to release the exact terms of that situation just yet. We'll get into that next week. But if you are interested in getting into league play at Swing Easy Golf Club, go by and see them and pay attention to us here on the Hunt Palmer Show because we're going to put some social media content together, maybe a little competition to get a team qualified into scramble play for league play. It's Swing Easy Golf Club. They're on Seagan at Perkins. SwingEasyGCBR.com.